Welcome to MMA Fancast. Today is a story of the Lukes. My name's Luke Basin, and welcome back to the show, Lucas, the Sniper Seibert. Lucas, welcome back.
What's up, man? How you doing?
I am thrilled to have you back. You're about 48 hours removed from a huge win, I think, Saturday night for Cage Thunder. You took on a guy who was 3-3. You were 2-0 at the time, so six amateur fights compared to your three times your experience. What led you to take this fight first, Malcolm, before we jump into how it went as far as the matchup goes?
I've kind of in my career progressively gone up, right? First guy was 0-1 guy. Next guy he was 2-2. He had one fight that wasn't sanctioned, but he's 2-2. And then Malcolm's 3-3. Experience obviously in the cage is super important. I have tons of competition experience, so I'm not really worried about the competition aspect. But like in the cage, I mean, he had 6 fights. It's 3 times the amount I had. But honestly, I was supposed to fight in December. A big part of this fight was I wanted to qualify for the PA advanced AMI rules in April.
Yeah, we had talked about that, so thanks for bringing it up. I'm sure we'll get to all of it, but for people that don't know, advanced amateur rules in April starts with either a 3-0 record or a 2-1 record. You sitting at a 2-0 record, which is something that I think the state should consider as advanced amateur, because if you're 2-0, you can't then be worse than a 2-1, obviously. So, but that made a lot of sense that you wanted to become advanced amateur. We'll get to why and what you want next for your career, because April is a huge card for 247 Fighting Championships, Brandenburg 16, which I know that you've been talking about. So we'll get to that. The rule set in Ohio does allow sort of the advanced amateur rules of what Pennsylvania is with ground and pound. I got to watch your fight, and I know you used ground and pound. You're obviously very well-rounded. You wrestled for West Virginia University. You train under Mark Coleman, the godfather of ground and pound. So what was it like to actually be able to set up positions on the ground and let your hands go?
It was good. Kind of frustrating at times. The kid I fought, like, he didn't have a great grappling wrestling background. And when you fight guys that don't necessarily know they don't know what they're supposed to do sometimes. So what you anticipate isn't what happens, right? So he was real squirmy on the ground, grabbing my wrists a lot, right? In the pro setting, grabbing somebody's wrist on top is not going to work. He's going to be able to those. And like we kind of train for pro a lot, so I don't get that feel. And it was kind of frustrating at some points, but I started like just thinking position, like getting to positions first when I was on top. And then in the exchange where I actually finished him, I could hear Mike perfectly. And he transitioned me from a Von Flute attempt to mount, and mount turned into him kind of giving up his back. Yeah. But I mean, with Mike Wilkins in my corner in a good year, I could get that one done.
Yeah, speaking of Mike Wilkins in your corner, obviously the head coach, the reigning coach of the year, he and Will for 247, obviously very exciting, and the reigning gym of the year. You mentioned the Von Flu. I always like to call it the Von Prue out of reference to Ovince St. Preux hitting it 4 times in the UFC. But you tried that choke, which I think is great. It's probably my favorite choke. You tried it twice in the first round, and the announcer said something, and every commentator's a little different. I'm sure not everybody's thrilled with what I say, and I know they weren't trying to offend you, but they made a comment after round 1 that you weren't doing much on the ground, which I disagree with, because you had tried 2 Von Flu or Von Prue chokes, which for people that may not know, that is the perfect choke to defend the guillotine as long as you get to crossbody, which you did, or side control, which you did both times. How much do you like that choke? You set it up, to my count, twice in the first round, then obviously again in the second round. And how close were you to finishing? I think the second attack in round 1 looked pretty good.
The second one was close. The first one, so I scouted this kid like really well. Every time he got taken down in all of his fights, he ended up he would hold on to a crossbody guillotine. Yeah. I texted Mike and worked on it with Chris Dempsey.
Sure.
And was like, hey man, I really think this is gonna be there. I need to get it. That first one, it was against the cage, exactly where I wanted, exactly what I had kind of envisioned in my mind, like bring him over to the coaches, and have them go. That kid's, I had an insane leverage on that choke, and I had to bail. I kind of was like feeling like I was about to go for a second, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna bail. Got back to the position. The second one was really close, just a little wrist adjustment. I did one in the second round right before I transitioned out, and I actually heard him like gargling. So that one must have been somewhat close, but just like minor adjustments. My past 2 fights, I've kind of called like my shots. I thought my first one I was going to finish with a Darce, and I had it locked up, guaranteed, would have been a sub. And I just a little adjustment, I would have finished it. And then this one, same thing. Like I was in that opportunity. I had the opportunity that I kind of had placed in my mind and just couldn't execute it. So I think like obviously there's a lot of takeaways in my opinion on things I need to improve on, but like I'm just little minor adjustments away from finishing guys in the first round and all of my fights really.
Well, the exciting thing about my comments about the Von Flu is that you were going for the finish. Obviously, to your point, because you want to get better and better, you're very honest on these interviews, which is why I like having you on the show. You want to get those tiny little adjustments better, which can rack up finishes earlier, although you got the finish in the second round, which we'll get to. But I was pointing out the fact that for anybody out there that might not have the wrestling background that's going to use the guillotine in wrestling defense, which is a great idea. If you get the full guard, you should keep doing that. But take it from Lucas, take it from me or anybody else. If somebody transitions to crossbody or side control, you need to get out of, let go of, and come inside them. That's the best idea because a wrestler or anybody that's good with the Von Prue is going to use that. Did you get a chance to either watch on video or in person Justin the General Patton, his first pro win was with the
I was just about to add on to that. I should have. I sparred with him like the 2 weeks before. I should have asked him about it because I had been training it, and he had it against the cage. I think with the Von Flu, you get a little bit more leverage against the cage because the guy can't scoot out, and you can kind of angle off a little bit better. I was talking to Mike about that before, and he had it perfect. So I probably should ask him about that. That's the cool thing about Pittsburgh, man. Like almost all the gyms train together, so like we can kind of just pick each other's brains. Like I mean, I get to train with obviously Mike and Will wherever. All my training partners like Miguel, Tim, Brittany, all them, and then I also get guys like Chris Dempsey once a week usually at least. I get Isaac, Shaka, Kama. I mean, I get tons of different looks and feels from guys of like all levels. So that's the best thing about Pittsburgh MMA, in my opinion.
Oh, sure. We've talked about that quite a bit. What makes Pittsburgh MMA? One of the reasons why 247 as an organization, which is doing so well, is because the gyms in the area are producing such high level. And you mentioned Coach Isaac Greeley. He just won a pro sort of main event grappling jiu-jitsu, of course, got the submission of the night. Why wouldn't he? It's just the high level. He's the only current 247 Hall of Famer. I'm sure they'll be adding more, but it goes to show the level of skill in the area. Walk through the second round. We talked about the first round. Second round, you kind of already mentioned it. You had a couple takedowns. You had a Von Flu attack, and then you ended up finishing belly down on rear naked choke, which is almost impossible to get out of at that point. What set that up? And then I have a question that you could kind of, there appeared to be a little bit of beef. The announcers were talking about that there was a weight issue after the fight was over. It appeared that your opponent was kind of talking maybe towards your fans or the crowd, even though he had just lost. So what was going on with that? Because obviously this is sort of part of the story.
Second round was more the same. I ended up on top. I took a couple bad shots. In my opinion, they were a little bit too far out, but not like little adjustments, right? Like people say you took a far shot, but like in reality, a far shot's 6 inches different than where my foot is placed. So, just little minute things, and I'm gonna look a little bit better. But on top, raining punches. I landed a little bit more like ground and pound in that fight, or in the second round. Once I got on top, transitioned to mount, Mike walked me through it perfectly. That's one thing. 247, the coaching chairs aren't as close.
Oh,
That's one thing I wish 247 could do, because the coaching chairs aren't as close. And the one time I coached, I was right next to the cage, and the one time or in this fight that was outside of 247, I could hear Mike and Will really well, which was nice. My other fights I haven't been able to. But I listened to Mike, ended up mount, rained some punches. Kid gave up his back. I kind of felt him like kind of give up in a way. Obviously, he's fighting through it. I heard the clap, and Mike and Will were like punch, punch, punch. But when you've competed for so long, you kind of can feel somebody's kind of will break. So I went and I sunk the choke, and he tapped. But it was a good performance. The leading up stuff, I mean, it's all done and over with now. Actually, I text with Malcolm and stuff.
good.
He's a cool dude. And it was in his hometown, so I think a lot of it's like wanted a lot of people to come, which I get, right? But obviously, for me, like with the whole beef stuff and even the stuff that like my fight that was supposed to happen in April, it's like I don't really need the extracurricular. If you sign on the line, I take it personal. If you sign on the line, you personally think that you can beat me, and I take that personal. I don't need anything else. For some people, they do, and I get that. Coming from a sports psychology background, and I talked about this in my Forged in Ohio interview. Coming from a sports psychology background, some people do need that like extra thing, especially in combat sports. Me personally, I don't. I've competed at a super high level for a long time. But afterwards, Malcolm was super cool. There's obviously some extracurricular stuff. I think they got handed some suspensions and stuff, which is unfortunate. But like, obviously, there's not much you can do about it at the point it got to. I'm proud of myself. I just kind of chilled in the back and let things go. A younger version of me would definitely wouldn't have done that, but I kind of backed myself up against the cage. I was thinking like Connor and Khabib. I was like, I'll go no the cage. So I backed my back up against. So it was like, Will, I know you know how to throw a punch. But yeah, it was a fun couple 30 seconds, and everything calmed down. And it is what it is. But yeah, no, Malcolm's a great guy. Cage Thunder, great promotion. They handled it really well, all things considered, in my opinion. But it was awesome.
Well, I'm glad for your breakdown. I'm also glad that it's water under the bridge. And hats off to Malcolm now that, things are cool between you. Like you said, there's a lot of emotions that go into it. You have a sports psychology background. I think that kind of gives you the advantage to not, like you said, you'll take it personally that somebody is going to fight you to think that they can beat you, but you're not going to buy into some of the trash talking or some of the other things that go into it, which is.
I was talking a lot during the fight, but sometimes I'll do that without knowing, right? A lot of the stuff I've done, even in my fights, technically, are stuff I do without thinking. And like I remember I whiffed on a punch and I like pointed to it and then threw another punch. And like still little stuff like that. It's just like when you're kind of having like an out of body experience, those are the best ones. You're talking a little bit of trash. But yeah, I don't really engage. I don't want to too much, especially at the amateur level, right? It just doesn't make sense. I'm not getting paid more to do it. I mean, maybe a little bit on ticket sales, but I don't think I'm selling any extra tickets for a beef.
Right. And maybe that changes. We've seen it sometimes at the pro level change. I think Mighty Mouse Johnson, probably the greatest sort of the light as a featherweight, flyweight. He I don't remember him ever talking trash. And I think that's one of the reasons why the UFC kind of felt like he wasn't driving ticket sales, but yet his fighting was so high level. To me, I wanted to watch him fight because of his skill level, not because he was talking trash. So it's really cool that you have that. We've mentioned April 15th for Brawl in the Berg 16 a couple times. Tanner Cahill had come on this show to call you out. So obviously you took that seriously. It sounds like you guys were going to make that fight work, but now it's falling apart. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what your plan is now for April?
Yeah, man. So yeah, Tanner hopped on. I think it was like this. It was right around Christmas time, because I remember when he did it, I was driving back and I was like, oh, I can't really engage with this right now. But yeah, he called me out in December, and I needed to get a fight before April to be advanced AMI and stuff like that. And Hunter and Ryan came to the fight. And afterwards, like I got on the mic and I had like a decent call out to Tanner. And then Hunter goes, "Yeah, man, Tanner's hurt." And I was like, "Oh, damn." I was just like, it like broke my heart too. And I was like, man, I really wanted that fight. There would have been a little bit of trash talk leading up. It would have been fun. But I mean, I'm not one to kick a dude while he's down. From what they told me, like the part of, and I'm not gonna give it 'cause I don't want anybody to like the Tanner stuff when he gets another fight. Part of the body that they said is hurt. Like, I'm hands off, not gonna say anything. Like, if he's like his toe hurts, I would have been like, all right, what are we doing
Sure.
here? But yeah, he said he was hurt, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm not gonna kick a man while he's down. I want to fight April 15th though. 135 or 145. Either one works for me. This last fight was at 45. Supposed to be at 40. Last day it got changed, but whatever. So I want to fight 35 or 45 in April. I want to fight for 247 again in July. The July fight, as long as all things go right in April, should be for a title. So I don't think Tanner will necessarily qualify for a title in July. So I'll probably, if I fight Tanner, it would be down the road for a 45-pound title. I want to win the 35-pound title after Miguel wins it. He's going to go pro, and then I'll take it. So that's my plan. If everything went to plan, everything seems to typically go somewhat to the plan. But, you know, there's always chaos in there. So looking for somebody between 135 and 145 pounds that wants to fight me April 15th in the Washington Casino, my favorite venue.
Yeah, it's a fantastic venue. I've been starting to interview some of the fighters for that fight. Just interviewed Miguel's opponent. Obviously, that's a title fight. That's a huge matchup. Your buddy Miguel is known as like incredible talent, looking to go pro. This is his belt. And we've always said it, 247 really likes to match up very good matchups. I mean, bringing a kid in who's 6-0 from New Jersey, that means a lot to both fighters. I was going to ask you about the Miguel because obviously Miguel Francisco and you are buddies. You train together. You're very close. So it's kind of cool that you won't have to challenge him because if he wins the belt, then he'll move on to pro. I know that's his plan. So super fun there with all of that. And for any fighter that's watching this, from what I've seen, you, Lucas, you're very upfront. You'll take a fight if somebody's willing to fight you between 35, 40, and 45, you know, any of those three numbers in there to be able to fight April. And I think you, you know, having the goal to then fight for what would then be the vacant title in July is really, really exciting stuff. What makes the Meadows Casino, Hollywood Casino at the Meadows, what makes that venue your favorite?
So obviously I've only fought at two venues. This past Cage Thunder one and the Meadows one were my first two fights. But I've been to a couple ones, just being around. Like, I've seen a lot of fights. I've seen fights in arenas. I've been to a UFC fight in Charlotte before. I've seen fights in kind of all different places. Texas will put on ones at like huge arenas too. At Texas, I went to one. The Meadows Casino is so like close and tight. A little bit too much fog last time, but they'll get that straightened out. But it's just really close and really tight, and just like it gives you that feel. It's like an underground fight club feel, and I just love it. And another thing about it, and not Cage Thunder's fault, but like at the casinos, just any casino in general, you can just pop off like right over and like have an after party with your family and stuff. This last fight, like, it wrapped up. I was near the end. My fight wrapped up around 11, and it was like, all right, well, there's no food. We have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Which kind of, so that, I think that's a huge selling point to the 247 thing, and you know, the after parties and stuff. 247, in my opinion, is the best organization from what I've seen on the regional scene. Obviously, there's better ones in the like higher level stuff. But like regional amateur, especially MMA, 247 does great promotion with like production, with, you know, the pictures, the videos. They get everything out to you quick. and I'm just very much like on, you know, I want to fight for 247. I want to kind of build my amateur career in 247, maybe get my first couple pro fights, and you know, I don't have to drive too far either.
Well, I love that. I get to be cage side calling the action, so I love that you plan on sort of if it's within your control, fighting for 247 going forward. We already mentioned Justin Patton. He fought amateur and then he's fought pro for 247. Tom Kaiser won a belt for 247 and then made his pro debut for 247. So I think that transition is, I mean, that's what they want. And you're obviously, Miguel is another one as well that is sort of right there to go pro and hopefully within 247. So very exciting stuff. You mentioned it, so I'll also say it. Best wishes for a good recovery for Tanner Cahill. We always want it's part of the sportsmanship to have tension because it is combat sport, but nobody gets better if somebody's injured. So obviously we want him to recover to be able to have as good of a career as possible. And I don't know his injury status. I'm glad you kind of know and you're respecting what's injured. And there's a lot of things that can come up within MMA. So I think that's kind of a great way to kind of put that on pause for now. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, Jim Mooney, the head matchmaker for 247, does great stuff. So hopefully he or anybody out there that wants to fight you is willing to get that. Obviously, you would want that at advanced amateur, right? So somebody needs to have a 2-1 record. Sanctioned fights, you mentioned there are still some unsanctioned fights out there, which are great. Those are experienced fights, but they don't count then to any commission. So I always caution fighters against taking unsanctioned fights because it doesn't help their record when they need it. But you know,
it gets weird too with like with the Pennsylvania thing. Like Pennsylvania is kind of very strict with like there's a certain, I forget what state it is, but they're like, yeah, we don't count fights in that state. Because
it's one of the states that they just have sort of banned. Yeah,
my buddy Anthony Hochback, he's looking for a fight, 3-1 guy, same weight, and they thought they had an opponent, and it was, I believe, I don't want to get quoted, but I think it was for a title, and they were like, oh wait, the kid he's technically 2-0, and he was like, well, he has 3 fights on Tapology, and they were like, yeah, we don't count that one.
Yeah, that makes it tough, and I appreciate you kind of sharing that for people that don't understand. Particularly in amateur, it's very hard not only to match fights, it's very hard to get fights to stick, whether it be because of you're mentioning the rule sets, you're mentioning commissioners, all types of things. So hats off to everybody behind the scenes. A lot of work goes into whether it be for clearances, medical stuff. You and I know that when the calendar changes from the year of Pennsylvania, and I would say most other commissioners, they restart all of their physicals and stuff, even though you could have had a physical 3 weeks ago and now you need a new one. So there's all types of things that come up. And that's just part of the fight business. We want MMA to be regulated. It's not good if MMA isn't regulated. We want it to be safe with good referees, good training, and all that stuff. So hats off to everybody that's involved because it really does make a big difference. But you've mentioned Ryan Middleton, Hunter, and I just brought up Jim Mooney, kind of the main heartbeat of 247. They do a lot of work for not only all the fights that you see, but a lot of the fights that never happen. They've put a ton of work into. So hopefully you get matched. I can't wait to see you fight. I love the fact that you kind of have a game plan. I think the sports psychology degree helps you sort of have realistic goals that you can set for yourself. But let's wrap up if you're okay with it, which I'm sure you will be. Since we've talked about your future goals and stuff, let's get your prediction on the Miguel title fight because he's your boy. This is super exciting. We're talking about a guy who's 4-2 fighting a guy who's 6-0 for the 247 bantamweight amateur belt. Ronlenberg 16, April 15th. Let's get your prediction and feel free to call a shot if you could.
Yeah, Miguel's not only my boy, he's my roommate. I don't know.
Oh, there you go. I figured you guys were close. Didn't know that.
Yeah, we live together now. So I know Miguel's training schedule, and I genuinely don't know anybody that trains as hard as that kid. Right now, he's actually in LA. He left the day after my fight to train at King's for this camp. He took the right approach for this camp. Like most of his fights were at 40, 45. There was a possibility I could have got off of the bantamweight amateur fight for this, and we were kind of like, I want Miguel to fight at 135 before he goes pro. And that was kind of the thought process. And Miguel kind of got really good opponent, a pro quality opponent, with a pro camp, right? He's known it for, I think he's known the opponent for 3 months. He's been fighting for like 4. So, as far as Miguel fighting, I see him winning kind of in whatever facet he wants, however the fight goes. Obviously, fighting's kind of hard to predict. But with the training partners we have, the people, I plan on bringing in for him as well, I just genuinely, I don't see how it doesn't go our way April 15th. And if it starts to go the other way, Miguel's so dangerous. I don't think it doesn't get finished. I predict Miguel getting a finish. I don't know if that's going to be a sub, KO, TKO. But as you guys have seen, especially in 2022, the kid can win anywhere. And I think that's what I think Stout's best at. Just in general, like we have guys that knock people out, but they also are blue belts and purple belts. And Mike's very, very specific on this. Guys that compete in MMA and like giving them belts, they have to earn them, right? So, like, we have Miguel, who is a Golden Gloves boxer, he goes to another gym that's super stingy on promotions. He's a 10th Planet blue belt. Miguel's elite at jiu-jitsu. So Miguel's ready anywhere. Me, as far as my fights, I've had KO, unanimous, and a sub at this point. So, we're just really well-rounded. We train all facets of the game. We get technically better everywhere. We're more intelligent, have better game plans, and we can handle the fire, handle the pressure better than anybody. So I think Miguel's going to do great. I think anybody from Stout that's on that card is going to do great. I think Stout in 2023, I think 2022 is a great year. I think 2023 is going to be even better. And we're going to have harder fights too. So our record, might not look on paper better. And right now we're undefeated, but we'll see. We're going to try to match the hardest guys. Like Mike says, he's going to try to get us to lose, especially the guys that are planning on going pro soon. So Tim Bailey's got a fight next weekend in Cleveland, or this weekend in Cleveland. We got a couple guys on the Morgantown card that I should have been fighting on, but it's my brother's bachelor party. I had to go ahead, family first, of course. And, and then April will roll around. We got Miguel, me, most likely, a couple other guys. Logan's fighting again in April, and then Brittany and Mason will be making their pro debuts this year. And then we got killers like Visoki and all them. So Stout's gonna turn up this year, and I've been hashtagging it everywhere. I think it's Stout versus everybody, and that doesn't just mean the Stout gym. That means anybody that comes in on Saturdays at noon, and everybody's more than welcome to come and help us train.
Well, I appreciate that. I think it's exciting that you're such a great representative of both Immortal and Stout. Now that Stout's your home gym, and obviously Stout is the reigning gym of the year for 247 and the reigning coach of the year. So you're just kind of talking to why that is. You mentioned a bunch of names, so it's always exciting when this is what happens, right? There's this groundswell of talent and skill. Iron sharpens iron, a great Bible verse, but it does come out in the training room, right? When you're training with great people, everybody is coming up so well together. So I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to see it. I can't wait, not only for April, because 247, that's going to be a end of July card. Both those cards are going to be huge, but just for what you and everybody out of Stout is doing. I always like to say I knew Mike Wilkins because I coached him in track when he was 18 years old at Waynesburg University. He was mainly there as a wrestler, but he did do track, so I got to know him back when he was 18. So I've known him a long time, and he had an incredible MMA pro career himself before becoming really dialed in on coaching. So hats off to everybody at Stout, and I've always been pulling for Mike Wilkins and his younger brother AJ and all that. So thanks so much for coming on the show. Best skills to you. Congratulations. I know this is a really great win that you had, but we're both talking like you're on to the next, because that's your mindset. You won 2 days ago, but it's on to the next, and it's future oriented. So just an honor having you on the show.
Yep, I appreciate it, man. Always good to be on the show. shout out to all my sponsors and stuff. I can list them all off, but
Run through them, baby. Run through them.
yeah,
Sponsors, go for it.
Daniel Bruce Train. He was the one involved in a little bit of extracurricular activity in that last one, but he's a great guy. He's been he came up and recorded even some of my sessions from my fight before. Milo Training Systems in Morgantown. Lifting strength and conditioning program that they've been sending me stuff. Mortal Diet Optimization. Any fighter who's interested in diet plans, getting ready for your weight cut. There's all the Pittsburgh guys are starting to get on the way with it. Miguel's on it. Jesse Sudu. We got tons of guys on it. If you want to get your weight under control, want a good diet plan, weight cut, after weight cut rehydration, which I think Eddie's best at. Immortal Diet Optimization on Instagram. Eddie Rovnak, super qualified, runs program with Matt Brown. And then Hobo Chic, which is my buddy's company, Cow Show Stall, PA-based company. There's still hoodies on sale. I'll put the link in my bio on Instagram and stuff. But aside from that, Stout Pittsburgh, my coaches, all my training partners and stuff like that, I think we're going to have a good year this year.
Well, I appreciate that. And I never want to cut you off for going through your sponsors. That's a big part, particularly in the amateur and also pro. Every sponsorship, not only does it help you, but we also got to be very gracious for those sponsoring amateur fighters, right? It's probably more because they love the sport and they want to help people. So all of those sponsors are people that really care about local MMA or a certain fighter or a certain gym or whatever their motivation is. It's real hats off to every sponsor, particularly sponsoring amateur fighters or really anybody that they're putting effort into. So I'm glad you got to go through that list because a lot of times that really is what makes a difference in a fighter's career. So congratulations to you again, Lucas the Sniper Seibert. You're up and coming, 3-0, undefeated, and I can't wait to see what happens for you and the Stout guys. And you mentioned Brittany Bickart and her too going forward. So thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yep. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Got it. Have a good one.
Yep.